Celtics Beat is brought to you by PrizePicks and the GameTime app.
Welcome in, everyone. It is a 2024 recap show. Look ahead to 2025. Bottom line is, it's our final Celtics Beat of the calendar year. Not the season, but the calendar year. And still, team's not done yet. 2 more games to close out 2024. But I'm thrilled, for one, to not be sitting here on the heels of a 3-game losing streak, because I know sky is falling, Evan Valenti. Everyone would just be beside themselves. The title run, it's over. Close the window. They're done. They're cooked. No, that's not true, obviously. But this team got right in a big way with a very lopsided, relatively easy-looking win against the Indiana Pacers to begin a back-to-back. And that came after falling to the Orlando Magic, a team that our guest actually used to work for, but also a team that Cedric Maxwell, weeks, if not months ago on this show, said that he believes at full strength, which they are not, that the Magic are the Celtics' biggest threat to come out of the Eastern Conference. So we can touch on that. And then, of course, the Christmas Day game where, look, I lost some money on the Celtics that day. I went with a little narrative street thinking Boston was going to take a win at home against Philadelphia. Always just living in Joel Embiid's head. Didn't happen. Sixers emerged victorious that day. Let's bring in Marc D'Amico. Marc, happy holidays to you, for one. Good to have you back. It's been a bit. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Right back at you. Holidays have been great. Christmas Day didn't get a win, but I had my daughter at her first Celtics game ever, so that was good for me. And looking forward to the new year.
So yeah, we like to talk about core memories with GameTime here on this show.
Yeah, there's one right there.
Core memory.
That's it.
That is definitely a core memory. I held her up Simba style on the Jumbotron. So
that's
awesome. I got
awesome.
that forever.
That's very cool. So this team, again, if we're just looking, we're a big picture show. We do this once a week. And so when you're looking at this team, big picture, like, I dare people to find a complaint about the year 2024, right? I mean, we see banner 18 hoisted to the rafters, the continued ascension. You would think they're running out of room, real estate to continue to grow. And yet here they are, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. This team is so incredibly well-rounded and versatile and deep. No knock on wood, wood right here. No knock on wood, huge injury concerns as we sit here right now, although the team obviously has had guys kind of in and out of the lineup, not playing at full strength right now, which has contributed to some of the play of late, some of the inconsistencies. And Peyton Pritchard positioning himself for 6th man of the year. So, things are good, obviously, in Celtics land. You're closer to it than the two of us. How's everybody feeling inside about, this past year on the whole and where we're going?
I would say it couldn't get any better. I mean, unless the Celtics were, borderline undefeated and at the top of the Eastern Conference, 2024 literally couldn't get better. You win your first championship since 2008. You then in the offseason make the commitment from ownership and from the organization to go all in on this run, right? Like, they brought everybody back for the most part. Obviously, O'Shea Brissett is the one guy who did not come back this season, but everybody else is back, and that took a big financial commitment from ownership and from the team to be able to do that. Sam Hauser inks a new deal. Obviously, the Derek White extension. Drew Holiday did it before the season ended. So you're bringing all these key guys back to make a run for as long as you could possibly do it. And then the Celtics come out this season, and they come out hot at the top of the East. Obviously, the Cavs have been up there all season long. They've been unbelievable, which is a storyline that not enough people are talking about. But the Cavs have been up there. The Celtics have been there, right there in the number 1, number 2 seed, basically since the start of the season. So could it get slightly better if they were at the top and ahead of the Cavs? Sure. But I think anyone should walk away and take a step back at 2024 as a whole and say, that was one of the best years you can possibly have as a fan of the Boston Celtics.
Okay, I totally agree. And I want to kind of stick with this just for a second, because something happened Friday night after the game that it's not a notable thing, but it's something that I picked up on CLNS. We Instagrammed it out. We tweeted it out. It was a great moment between Peyton Pritchard and Jaylen Brown, and Peyton sticking up for Jaylen and hey man, he takes the toughest assignment every game. It's not the easiest job, but he always does it. And Jaylen, smile, was hey man, thanks for that. Appreciate that. And that's the one thing I love about this team, Mark, is the vibes, the camaraderie, the chemistry of this team is just off the charts. And you're a guy that gets to see this more than anybody else, day in, day out, up front. How do you feel like the camaraderie, the chemistry, the consistency of having this same core together for an extended run? Jason and Jaylen have been here for a long time. Al Horford's been here for a while. Derek White feels like he's been here forever, even though it's been a short amount of time. Peyton was drafted here. How much of the consistency, the camaraderie, the chemistry has contributed, a lot of C words, to the bountiful 2024 that we've experienced this year?
I mean, that's a huge part of the equation. There's no question about it. Like, all of these guys, there are no bad apples in that locker room, and there haven't been for a couple years now. And I don't think you can overstate how important that is. And the Celtics and Brad Stevens in particular have always talked about culture. They want to build a culture, and they want to bring players in who fit that culture. So at times there might be a free agent or someone who's on the trade block or anything like that, you know, some teams are going after, but the Celtics want to make sure that whoever they bring in the doors is going to fit into the culture. And they have hit home run after home run after home run from that perspective since Brad Stevens, and really before Brad Stevens rose into the presidency of basketball operations. They have always prioritized that, while also making sure that that player is going to bring something to the table that's going to help the team on the court. But to your point, Evan, like, that is a huge element of what was birthed last season in a championship title run. I mean, when the Celtics acquired Kristaps Porzingis, I think a lot of people around the NBA who didn't know him and hadn't really like been around him a whole lot, maybe thought that he was not quite the perfect teammate and things like that. Like, he walked in the door and was a perfect Celtic from the day he came in. And that to me says, okay, Brad Stevens and the rest of the basketball operations group did their homework, and they knew who they were acquiring, not what they were acquiring, but who they were acquiring. And that goes across the board. Derek White coming over from San Antonio. I mean, the list goes on and on. So, and to the point of last night of Peyton and Jaylen going up, can we get double podium appearances like every night? Awesome moments always happen. It's happened with Derek White up there, with Jason Tatum. Yeah. Like it, and that's the interesting thing that I want to touch on is, like, it can be any mix of any two players, and you always see them like smiling and having a good time and getting along. If you look around the NBA and you watch in the postseason in particular, because so many players have to come up to the podium after games, that camaraderie does not always exist. Like, sometimes it's just maybe two guys who get along, and that's the duo that's going up to talk together at the podium. The Celtics are unique in the fact that it can be any mix of two players that go up there together, and that camaraderie is always going to shine through. So that stuff comes through on the court. There's no question about that. That has been a huge element to what the Celtics were able to accomplish in 2024. And I think it's going to be a huge element of what they might accomplish in 2025.
I'll put a different term on it than what you guys have been saying, even though it's largely the same thing, which is lack of ego. You go up and down this roster. You go up and down this roster, and you look at, and I'm not going to start with the biggest names, but like Peyton Pritchard, of course, no ego. He's a 4-year college player. Most guys aren't at this stage if they're good, like legitimately good, and have, you know, this bright NBA future. Now he has become an exception. He's a solid, serviceable, better than that NBA player. He'd be a starter on a whole lot of teams, but he couldn't have come in obviously with ego. Sam Hauser, undrafted player. Like, there's no ego there. Al Horford, we know who he is and what kind of guy he is and what type of player he was before coming to Boston. No ego. Derek White had to earn his stripes in the NBA. No ego. Drew Holiday, a championship player, an Olympian, but someone who also has bounced around and played basically every role. He's been the sixth man. He's been the 20-point per game guy. No ego. And so, you climb.
It does though, Adam, like you're naming all those guys, but it does start at the top because,
but that's where I want to go. That's kind of where I'm building to.
Yeah.
Because like Porzingis, he's been humbled at various stops. So came in, with his ego at least in check. I'm sure he had one at one point, obviously, but then you go to Tatum and Brown, who are, the top as far as the players go. But I think to talk about them, two guys that absolutely have the talent, the ability, the swagger to have, maybe in another situation, maybe not playing together, loads of ego attached to them. Is it the guy who essentially raised them in the NBA, Brad Stevens, and the culture that has been born since Brad joined the organization, and obviously the role that he's in now? Is it Joe Mazzulla and his personality as head coach of this team and just the way he conducts himself? And a guy who, again, like he could have adopted something of an ego over the last couple of years, going from, as people like to say, second row Joe to the head coach of an NBA championship team. Ego could have formed along the way. And yet it just, I don't know. I'm kind of captivated by the fact that you look up and down this team, front office, coaching staff, roster, and you just see a group that meshes as well as it does without this threat of like, who's going to be that bad apple, Mark?
There's a lot of talk in the NBA about heat culture, and that is real, and it's been a thing for a decade and a half, 2 decades, whatever, since Pat Riley got there. And it's because every player they bring in the door winds up developing into something. The Celtics have Celtic culture as well, and it's a little bit different than heat culture. And it's going to what you're talking about there, of there just are no egos ever. And I think that goes to, show a lot about the front office's ability to know, like I said, who they are drafting, not what they are drafting in terms of a player, the person versus the player. I think the person part of that equation is very important. But then I put so much on the shoulders of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, because if you look at these two guys and you go back through the history of the NBA and how many players were in their position and didn't take the high road and didn't take the route of team first, I mean, the list is as long as a CVS receipt. Jaylen Brown is in a position. Yeah, sorry about that, CVS, but I had to say it. Jaylen Brown is in a position where he could easily be a number one on a team in the NBA and average 30 a game and take 25 plus shots and all that stuff. And that generally is what most players seek when they come into the NBA. They want to have that name. They want to have that cachet of I was one of the best scorers when I was in the league. I mean, even Kobe Bryant, there was a time when he wanted to get Shaq out of the door so he could be that guy and only that guy and win a championship by himself. Jaylen Brown has accepted the fact that Jason Tatum is, generally speaking, the number one offensive option for the team. And Jaylen's role on this team, in order for this team to be at the top of the top year in and year out, is he's got to be a great scorer, a dynamic scorer, but he's also got to be one of the best defenders in the NBA. And so, you look back through the history of the NBA, and people who are in that type of position where you could be the number one, or you could be this role where you're going to help the team win a championship, and hopefully championships with an S. There aren't many players that chose to go Jaylen's route that he has taken. And the same thing goes for Jason Tatum. The conversation has come up this season about MVP and blah, 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 blah. Every time it comes up, he says, if that happens, great. But what I'm concentrating on is winning. And so how many players have been as talented as Jason Tatum in the history of the NBA and had that opportunity he could average 35 a game, right? Like Harden did back in the day. He could put up wild stats, but that's not what's going to help the team win. So both of those guys, I have so much respect for the way that they approach the situations that they are in, the opportunities that they have, and them choosing to take this route as opposed to the routes that many players, as I said, a long, long list of them, have chosen to take in the history of the NBA.
Real quick break. We got to tell you today's show is powered by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members, billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to everyone. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks.
So many things, Coffin, make PrizePicks great, but in my opinion, I talk about this every single week, it's the flex play, okay? PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. Literally, nobody in the world is doing that. It's the coolest thing they do, and it makes all these I give out advice, quote unquote, every single week. It makes it a little bit more profitable for me because I usually get 2 out of 3 or whatever. It's just better. And we have 2 weeks left in the NFL regular season. Few more chances to play Prize Picks with a full slate of games. So we'll start with Drake May, baby. More than a half a touchdown against the Chargers. The defensive unit for the Chargers is tough, but Drake, even if it's a garbage time, he'll get 1. I love Josh Downs. More than 47.5 receiving yards. Colts v. Giants. The Giants are terrible. Let's take advantage of this one more time. And then this one's a little rogue, the last one I have for you. But the guy's an animal. He is an absolute machine. Brandon Aubrey. His longest field goal's got to be longer or more than 48.5 yards. You hit all 3 of these, Kaufman, you get 3.75 times your money.
Man, jumping into kicker props. I love that. Now, join now. This holiday season, PrizePicks is giving away 2 free picks in December. And December, of course, folks, is running out. They're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. Download the app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download that app today. Use CLNS, that's your code, to get $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah, and that selflessness is one of the things that, you hear coaches talk about it, opposing coaches talk about it. Like the last one I heard, and I might have missed one because the holidays had but JB Bickerstaff after the Detroit game was like, there's a reason why this team won the title, because they have guys in their team that are always looking for the next pass, the better pass that leads to the better shot.
That's why they're so hard to defend.
Yeah. And that's what leads me into my little rant here that I'm going to just gonna tee up for Mark, and he's going to slam it down for me. This is part of the reason why when people start, the Celtics on a 2-game losing streak and like the world's ending. And I thought last year maybe we got rid of this. I thought maybe winning a title would fix this, right? Like, if you go back very recently, Nikola Jokic wasn't the Terminator until he won a title. And now it's like, well, doesn't matter unless the clock says 3 zeros on it. You can't count Denver out. Yeah, but here we are, Mark, and it's December, almost 2025, and the Celtics go on a 2-game losing streak. Now, just to remind everybody, which I'm sure most of them are aware at this point, the Celtics haven't lost 3 games in a row in 2023, 2022?
I think it's been about
a long time.
Years.
It's been a long time, okay? You would think at winning at the level that Boston has, and again, they won a title. That's different. They've been to a cajillion playoff games and won the majority of them. You would think at a certain point that we wouldn't have to do this. We wouldn't have to have meltdowns every time they lose 2 games in a row. We could just say, hey, shot variance, or hey, stuff happens. But yet, here we are. And then you have the game against Indiana Friday night where clearly they wanted to get out and make sure that this was a game they could put their stamp on. And the physicality of the Orlando game maybe has, maybe woken up a little bit. They slowly woke up against Indiana. I think there's also a little motivation from the loss earlier in the year that they lost, I think in overtime, I think by 3, I think it was 137, 134. But they right the ship so quickly. And yet, until they right the ship, it feels like the sky is falling. And it's killing me. Does this get in the locker room at all, Mark? I know you read this stuff. You see it. You hear it. Is everybody else hearing this stuff? Because it's driving me crazy.
Absolutely does not get in the locker room. Those guys are confident. They know what they can accomplish and whatnot. I think what it is there's 2 parts of the equation. One is just the emotion of wanting your team to succeed like so much, like you want it so much that seeing them play not up to their capabilities on a night gets you frustrated. I get that. Usually it's the same thing for, I mean, maybe not the exact same thing, apples to oranges here, but like when a coach goes and sits down at his post-game podium, he's not going to think the same thing after the game, 10 minutes after the game ended as 24 hours after the game ended, after he got to watch the tape back and, let the emotions subside a little bit. It's the same thing for fans, right? So when you lose a game by 9 points to a team that you probably should have beat when you're talking about talent, everyone's going to be upset in that moment. But you fast forward 24 hours, usually those emotions could subside. The second part of the equation, in my humble opinion, is that the Celtics fan base has seen the team succeed, and they know how great this team is, right? Like, it's basically the same team. They know how great this team is. So if they see a stretch of 2 games, a week, whatever it is, 10 days, where the team isn't quite playing up to that capability, I think that just boils over with a little bit of frustration, which I think is that's okay. Like that's fine if there's some frustration, because I think even the Celtics in those moments, and Joe Mazzulla said it after the game, like, they weren't playing up to their capabilities during those couple of games, either offensively or defensively. So I get it. Frustrations are going to happen if you lose some games. But I will remind everyone, and I said this on our post-game podcast last night, the Celtics have lost 8 games this season by an average of 4.6 points. Okay. They still have not lost a game by double digits, and they were the last team in the NBA to lose consecutive games. So if you just take a step back and look big picture, like, things aren't that bad. And I think now, after getting back into the win column, I think everyone probably forgets about the Orlando loss, and, you're going to feel a lot better about things now that the team got back on track. But if people just take a step back and look at the big picture, it's never going to be that bad because the team is so darn good.
I just think the whole sort of conversation around what we're doing right here is funny, and it's because it's evolved so much. Like Bill Simmons, and this was probably back in like the page 2 days, he would talk about, not that he was the first, I'm sure, but kind of, famous for it, talking about teams, whatever team, whoever you root for, win championship. And then there's this grace period. Like, everything is okay for X. And I'm not talking about weeks or months. I mean, like, you win a championship and, you can't complain about anything for the next 5 years or whatever, like a true grace period that you would give these teams. Now, all of that has gone up in flames for a multitude of reasons, a multitude of very real reasons. I think if you boil it down to where we are in society on the cusp of 2025, there is negativity sells, so it's talking heads nationally, locally, whatever, complaining, bitching, bemoaning something that has got a little 2-game skid, losing to Orlando without the Magic's best players, all of that stuff. People get, sort of immersed in that. So that's one. Another is social media, where it spreads like wildfire. You get the slightest little tweet about anything, even if it's not an accurate report, and it just spreads, doesn't stop. And that, again, feeds into negativity. And the other one, we never really talk about this, but it's look, personal experience, because I'm deep in these weeds. It's very true. Gambling, gambling now with the legalization, I don't just mean Massachusetts. I mean, largely across the country at this point in time, it makes a difference to where Celtics go out and, win a game by 6. Cool. They won is how you should feel. But, oh, shit, they were 7-point favorites and they didn't cover the spread, and I lost my bet. Then people are just pissed. It feels like a loss because that person did lose. You know what I mean? So it's all of this stuff that contributes to just sort of like people love. Now, I mean, I don't think consciously, but human nature is what it is. People just love to look for an avenue to complain and to be upset about something, which is why you can look at all the different things that Marc outlined with positivities for this team. And someone will, in the comment section of this video on YouTube on the CLNS page, will say, yeah, but, they've lost more games at home than all of last year, right? Like, you're aware of that. So there's just always something. So that's why I say all of that, Marc, just because I'm thrilled it doesn't get into the locker room. And I would like to believe that, even if it's not a talking point, obviously, that Mazzulla and company, these guys, because of all these outlets, they're on social media, or their friends and family are, they know what's going on, that they do find such success in just blocking it all out and focusing on the job at hand. Because honestly, some of the stuff that happened in the offseason surrounding star members of this team could have derailed things to start off this year a little bit if guys started chasing their own stuff. And it goes back to that selflessness. They haven't. They've stayed unified, which is why they're positioned to do what we all hope they'll do.
Yeah, and I'll say one more thing on this front is So we have this is not a plug, but we have our post-game podcast called Sound Off. At the end of every game, I send out a post saying like, hey, what's everyone's reactions, thoughts, et cetera, to this game? Let me know. And then I pull a few to bring into the podcast every night. I will say those recent couple of losses, and this has been a trend throughout the whole regular season. There has been more people who have replied after a loss and said like, no big deal. Like, I'm good. It's just a bad night. The team's going to be okay. I have no worries about them. There's been more of that than there has been like, oh my God, the sky is falling down. There's always going to be those people who are super negative, and that's okay. Again, I think it gets back to the emotions and everything, and then they see a game like last night and they feel much better about themselves. That's totally fine. But I will say that like the amount of people who are confident in this team, regardless of the results of the night in and night out, is much higher than what it was like a couple seasons ago. If I was sending out these tweets, even last season, before they had won a championship, if I was sending these out, say early in the regular season, they lost 3 straight or something like that, which they didn't, as we've already talked about, but hypothetically speaking, before they won the championship, if I was doing this, I think there would be much more of like, I don't know, I just don't trust these guys. Like, they haven't proven it, but they have proven it now. And so that's why I feel like I am seeing that trend on social where a good chunk of the replies every night after the team loses is fans saying like, it was a bad night. It's going to happen. It's an 82 game schedule. No one's going to be perfect. So I just want to throw that out there that like, I don't feel like it's overwhelming. I feel like it's a small segment of either the fan base or NBA onlookers who kind of like go veer in the negative direction after a couple losses.
Understandable. And, look, as we kind of wind this show down a little bit, Kaufman, I'm not sure what you have planned left to ask Mark here, but, great 2024. Excellent. Best you could possibly ask for, in my opinion. How do we look for 2025, buddy? How are we feeling? How are the vibes?
I mean, what else could you ask for, right? I mean, you just we talked about it already, like health and luck are always going to come into play for any team that's looking to win a championship. It's difficult to win a title if you're not healthy and you're not lucky. Like, you even look back at last year's postseason run, 16-3 to win a championship, but there were some moments where the Celtics got lucky, and Joe Mazzulla has talked about this, where like if the coin flips the other direction, they lose a game. You never know how the series is going to go. In particular, those early games against Indiana, when a couple of moments, went against the Indiana Pacers, just a couple very small things. The series could have been much different. So you got to be lucky. You got to be healthy. Let's hope that the Celtics have that coming up in 2025 as they had for the majority of 2024. And Adam, I don't know if we're going to get into anything else here, but one other thing I want to touch on is Jaylen and Jason. We've already talked about them a little bit, but Jaylen winning Player of the Year in the NBA for Sports Illustrated. I thought that was awesome for him to get that recognition, and for Chris Mannix to be, obviously he's worked around the Celtics for most of his career, but I think he was able to take a step back and see from like a big picture perspective of like, what did players accomplish as opposed to what is the reputation of players, right? Like Luka Doncic has this reputation as this triple-double machine and averaging 30-something points a game. Jaylen's not that guy, but Jaylen Brown accomplished the pinnacle. He won Eastern Conference Finals MVP. He won Finals MVP, and he won a championship while being one of the key players, if not the key player in that run. So I thought that was awesome. And the other thing for Jason Tatum is not a lot of people are talking about it, but he is having by far his best rebounding season of his career. He's got 8 straight games of double-digit rebounds. He's averaging 9.6 rebounds on the season and almost 30 points. So he's veering in the direction of a 30-point double-double of averaging that this season. He's like right on the cusp of that. And I haven't looked back in the history books. I don't know how many Celtics have done that. It might not be any. And I don't know how many players in NBA history have done that. So that's something to pay attention to. Like Jason Tatum has clearly, there's an emphasis on him attacking the glass this season. That's a role they need him to play, and he's doing it at an exceptionally high level. And I think those numbers, if the Celtics take care of business, are going to wind up helping his cause when it comes to that MVP conversation at the end of the season.
We'll take one more break to tell you today's show is powered by GameTime. There is nothing better than going to a live game. Truly nothing. It's fun to watch on TV. It's fun to, hang out at a bar or whatever. But being there, being in those seats, in the building, you just can't top it. So many core memories I have as a kid, hell, even now with my kids, revolve around going to some sporting event. So, think about it. I took my kid, my oldest, and a few of his friends. We went to a game over at Fenway. It was a Red Sox game. It was a few years ago at this point. And of all people, here's a throwback name for you, Ev. Of all people, they're coming back. They go to extra innings. Travis Shaw hits a game-winning grand slam. That is the only reason that my oldest son even knows the name Travis Shaw or remembers Travis Shaw.
That's a throwback.
He remembers his birthday celebration. Travis Shaw was the hero, man. So going to a game, it's easier than ever, thanks to our friends over at GameTime.
Yeah, and GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes seeing your favorite teams or favorite people in concert even easier. They filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. So you have to waste any time searching through thousands and thousands and thousands of tickets. Plus, you get all-in pricing. This is my favorite thing because I hate the hidden fees. Drives me crazy. GameTime toggles this feature to show you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. You can get a panoramic view from your seat. And they have a lowest price guarantee, Kaufman. If you find tickets for less, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. Kaufman, you are making money with GameTime.
Yeah, you can't top it. You cannot top it. 110%. Oh God, I would like to profit on GameTime and go see these games. You can't. It's GameTime ticket coverage. Your purchase, it's covered. The most flexible customer service policy in the entire ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code CLNS, $20 off your first purchase. It is truly that easy. Terms apply. Again, create your account. Just download that GameTime app, do so, and then redeem your code CLNS for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. Let's get back to the show. Which, by the way, we've talked about on this show before that, I have no issue whatsoever with Tatum wanting to be NBA MVP regular season. There's a difference, guys, between wanting it and hoping that your team accolades contribute to your personal accolades versus chasing it. Like Mark said, Tatum could be out there looking to average 35 plus points and take 30 shots a game, get the volume, get the stats, and not necessarily always do the things that best help the team toward winning. He recognizes, and he has discussed this, that a lot of time, if you look back through NBA history, that stuff kind of takes care of itself. If you're a really good player on a really good team, then you might get some really good awards, basically, is what it comes down to. And so he's cognizant of that. Of course, he wants the award, and I don't, begrudge him for wanting it. He should want it. Like anyone that, like Perk, right? A little while back was crapping all over to Tatum in this, quote unquote chase for the MVP. He should want it. That should be important to him. Just don't take yourself or your team off course to try and go and get it, and you'll be fine. Tatum is legitimately right now, not even halfway through the year, I realize, but he is legitimately in the most valuable player conversation, which last couple of years he hasn't been. And we've had to do this, and people are, what do you mean he's not? You knew, sure, top 5, top 6, whatever, but there's a difference between top 5, top 6, and top 2. And, really being a candidate to win the award. Jason Tatum right now is a true candidate to win this award. And it could be an incredible capper, obviously, to 2025 if they can go out, win a consecutive title, get all of these personal accolades, whatever it may be. I know that Jaylen Brown, you were talking about it. Obviously, he is someone that would love to be on an all-NBA team, all NBA defense, whatever it may be. He accomplished so much last year between the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, NBA Finals MVP, winning the championship, like you said, that trifecta. But then again, as he has discussed and we've discussed, getting shut out when it came to the Olympics or being on those all NBA, whatever teams, whichever category. So there is, I just like that there's meat on the bone. There's stuff that these guys are still chasing, and that all of these things, including, of course, the basketball athlete of the year for Sports Illustrated, this stuff, it just means something to them. Before we do wrap here, because you brought it up and we were going to get there, as far as Jaylen Brown and getting that distinction, what does it mean to him, do you think? I don't know how much you've talked to him about it at all, but to be in that category, like he seems like the kind of guy that type of award means more to him than being first team All NBA, for instance. Not that I think he's going to be that, but if you were comparing the two, I think that some of these types of awards, or like like the SI equivalent of Time Man of the Year or whatever it may be, I think this stuff really resonates with him because of all the things that he does both on and off the floor.
No, I haven't gotten a chance to talk to Jaylen about it. Last night after the game, I go straight up to our studio and record the post-game podcast that I mentioned. So I haven't gotten a chance to talk to him about it, but I would imagine that receiving a type, and by the way, he has reposted that and put it on his social channels. Like, clearly he's proud of it, which he should be. But I think no matter who you are, any award or anytime you're chosen to win something for what you have done on the court or off the court, it's some form of a validation, right? For what you have, the effort that you have put into developing yourself, either as a player or with your foundation, whatever it is. Anytime you get that type of recognition, it's going to be kind of an affirmation moment for you that everything that you've done is paying off. So, like I said a few minutes ago, I'm happy for Jaylen, and he deserves it. And I think it's really cool to see Jaylen and by the way, I would love for Jason to get all of the awards and everything, but not everyone can get both. But it's really cool to see Jaylen get this stuff while taking that route that I talked about earlier, right? That he's in this position where he easily could be like, no, I'm out. Like, I want to be the guy. I want to be the one who leads the team and gets all of the recognition and gets all of the awards. But he's taken the high route and said, no, like, I'm good with doing this to try to make this team win. And it's cool to see him take that route, like, consciously. He has made that decision to do that. And then now all of this stuff is following along. I just think it's so cool. And the same thing goes for Jason. As I said, like, not everyone can win. There's only one winner of all these awards, so two guys can't get it. But Jason is getting first team All NBA every season. Like, that's because he's choosing to win. And so it's just so cool to see these guys get that affirmation, and in particular Jaylen, because I think he sacrifices the most out of any probably superstar level player in the NBA. It's just so cool to see that for him. I can't wait to congratulate him in person. Didn't get to do it last night, but hope to do that here coming up tomorrow.
Celtics 23-8, 2 games left in 2024 before we flip the calendar. Both are at home. You got the Pacers one more time, hopefully another 30-plus point win, although I didn't really get the impression Joe Mazzulla enjoys those games quite as much. Those giant blowouts, whether, wrong side, right side, that you just don't learn as much from. I think he likes when it's a sweat and these things are competitive down to the wire, building habits toward the playoffs and all that stuff. But you know what? For
get good momentum out of it, though. Like, I don't think you can argue against that, right? No, like, it's a good rhythm game.
Absolutely. So we got the Pacers again on Sunday, then Tuesday, New Year's Eve, against the Raptors. Afternoon game, 3:00 Eastern time. And then you can go out, enjoy your dinner, whatever you're doing with friends, family, whoever. And then it's on to 2025, starting off with a road trip. Minnesota, Houston, OKC, and Denver. A gauntlet in the first
January is a month. That is a month.
Going to be fun. Going to be a lot of fun to talk about this team. Always fun to have Marc D'Amico from the Celtics on with us and break down all things going on with this organization inside and out. Marc, we really appreciate it, man. Happy holidays again. Happy New Year. Thanks so much for hopping on with us, and we'll do it again next year.
For sure. Sounds good, guys. Appreciate it. Happy New Year to you guys and all the listeners.
All right. For Evan Valenti, for Mark, I am Adam Kaufman. Happy New Year, everybody. Hope it's been a great holiday season, and we will talk to you again real soon in 2025.